This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Chris, this is a little different South Carolina team. We appreciate you making some time for us this morning. Last year, they had 4 total conference wins. This year, they already have 14 wins. What have you noticed from year one of Lamont Paris to year two of Paris?
Yeah, Ty, first things first, appreciate you having me on, guys, and happy 28 days until opening day. I know we're all looking forward to that, SEC baseball getting going. But, no, back to the hardwood, man. I think Lamont Paris has done a great job here in year two. You know, I think it first started, obviously, in the offseason, and we talk a lot about the transfer portal when it comes to football and the benefits or the way it can hurt certain teams. We're seeing that right now, I think. But Lamont Paris and company, I think they did a great job of utilizing the transfer portal, added a lot of veteran presence, a lot of veteran experience, guys like Talon Cooper, guys like Miles Studi, guys like B.J. Mack, some of these dudes that, you know, they're not only productive players and starters, if you will, but they're guys that are veterans, and they've had a lot of experience and success, if you will, right? Guys that are going to be able to weather the storm, you know, roll with the punches early in SEC play and non-conference play as well, and I think that's paid huge dividends, guys. I mean, Meechie Johnson also, I think, is playing the best basketball of his career. So it's all clicked for South Carolina early, guys. You know, you looked at that non-conference schedule, and I think we were all kind of in prove-it mode. South Carolina dodged a couple bullets, had a couple nice wins, right? Their only loss in non-conference was to the Clemson Tigers at their place, which is a really close competitive game, came down to the wire. And, you know, we know, guys, Clemson a top 25 type basketball program, so not really a bad loss in that respect. But I think Lamont Paris, man, you know, coming into the season, I think most folks agreed that an NIL appearance, if you could make, or excuse me, I've got my mind on NIL, NIT appearance in year two of his tenure would be a success. After a really rough year one, obviously taking over a program that was somewhat in shambles. And I mean, to say that he's ahead of schedule, you know, is putting it lightly. I think maybe expectations or dreams of the NCAA tournament were maybe a little bit premature. I still think getting to the NIT would be a massive, massive win for Lamont Paris and company, and I think they're well on track to do that, and certainly a game like this one tomorrow at Bud Walton Arena will go a long, long way in making that a reality.
Chris, when you look at the SEC, again, South Carolina's probably better than I thought they would be. Some other teams like LSU, Georgia have at least passed some of my tests to this point. Is it Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky and everyone else after Tier 1? Or how would you kind of define the makeup of this league through 4 conference games?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ty. I would definitely put the 3 you just mentioned. I think Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee are in a league of their own. I think Alabama, you know, the question I had for a couple weeks was who was the 4th best team in the SEC. I think now that Alabama started to get some things rolling, right, we knew they had the offensive side of the basketball. I do think they're that number 4 team. Really, Ty, to your point, the thing that really impresses me on a night-in, night-out basis is just the depth of the league, right? I think at the bottom, you know, we can safely say Vanderbilt is down there in the cellar. And then I think Missouri, right, they're off to a really rough start. I think 0-4 in conference play under Dennis Gates. But, you know, outside of that, man, 5 through, 12 in this league, you can really shuffle it up and sort of just, you know, take your pick when it comes to those teams. And I think, again, that's what makes the SEC. You know, we know what the SEC is in regards to football. We know certainly what it is in baseball. But basketball, it's becoming where any given night, man, any given night can beat anybody. I mean, look at Arkansas, for example. This is a team that's as talented as any in the SEC, and they lost their first 3 SEC games by a margin of 21.3 points per game because it's just if you don't show up and play your best, you can get your butt whooped. And, again, Arkansas has experienced that, and many teams have as well. So, you know, I'm kind of curious to see, what is Texas A&M going to end up being? They've been disappointing, obviously, Buzz Williams this season. What's Florida going to be, right? They've been off to kind of a rocky start in conference play. But like you mentioned, I mean, Georgia has really impressed. LSU has already surpassed their win total in the SEC from last year. Heck, South Carolina has surpassed their win total, period, from last year already. And then Ole Miss, what Chris Beard is doing in year one as well. So, you know, the depth of this league, Ty, it takes a back seat to no one. But I think that those teams you mentioned in the Tier 1 spot, I think it's Kentucky, Auburn, Tennessee, and kind of everybody else is trying to catch up.
Chris Phillips with us on the McClarty Daniel Hotline talking some South Carolina basketball this morning. You kind of slipped there and talked about NIL for a second and portal. It's South Carolina, Arkansas, obviously tied historically coming in the league at the same time. There's usually a lot of comparisons between the programs. What's kind of the view from the Carolina front porch of NIL and funding and not just basketball but football and all of that? How is South Carolina dealing with that issue within their athletic department?
Yeah, guys, it's funny. We've been talking so much about this Alabama stuff with the portal and the NIL stuff that it's like that's kind of where my mind has been over the last couple of days. But, no, it's a great segue, like you mentioned, what South Carolina is doing. They got a couple of great collectives, right? I'm good friends with the owner and operator of Carolina Rise, which is one. Garnet Trust is the official collective of the University of South Carolina. And then Park Avenue sort of facilitates their deals with the school or what have you. I don't know exactly all the details on it. But, admittedly, I think South Carolina is like some others where they're fighting an uphill battle when it comes to NIL. I'm not saying the NIL situation is porous, but it could be better, right? You talk to people, it could be better. I don't think South Carolina has, endless deep pockets, if you will, like maybe some do. And, when it comes to basketball, I would say this, the NIL situation across the board, it's improving, but it could be better. Certainly starting out, I think what's interesting, guys, a lot of schools out there like a South Carolina, maybe like a Mississippi State, maybe like some others that when NIL was first introduced, it was looked at as, okay, this is another opportunity for us to compete. This is another way we can separate ourselves. We can compete. All of a sudden, for some schools out there, right, the rich got richer, and for others, it was like, this is another thing we have to overcome now. This is just another thing we have to deal with. So I don't know how much really changes for a South Carolina from the standpoint of, I don't care if it's basketball, I don't care if it's football. I think baseball is different, obviously, because you've won national championships. That's a program that sort of recruits itself. But at South Carolina, you better be able to be a talent identifier and a talent developer. You better be able to identify talent, develop talent, because you don't just have endlessly deep pockets. And this goes for any sport, guys. You're not able to go out there and just, sign a bunch of five-star guys or sign the top guys in the portal every single year. But again, you look at what South Carolina basketball did over this last offseason, I think they did a really, really good job in doing that, right? They went out and got some guys, some that were high profile, but a lot of guys that were maybe under the radar, that had been productive, right? It's kind of like playing Moneyball, man. If we try to beat the Yankees in here, we won't beat the Yankees out there, and I think that's how you have to operate. And there's a lot of schools that have to operate that way. So, again, guys, long story short, I think the NIL situation at South Carolina, I'm not saying it's in the top 10 of college athletics. I don't know if it's in the top 25 of college athletics, but I do think it's improving. I think you got to give Gamecock Nation a lot of credit really rallying together and what the collectives have been able to do. But, in this ever-changing NIL landscape, this NIL world, I wonder where a school like South Carolina and some others, where they will sit and how they'll be effective with the times that are changing, because they're continuing to do so, no doubt.
I was just interested in what you had to say, because I think there's, a lot of things you just said. You could just plug the name Arkansas in. I think it'd be true for Arkansas, just like South Carolina, and certainly with kind of where you're at with basketball. Arkansas may be a little ahead there, but football and baseball similar in a lot of regards. All right, back to the game for tomorrow. How does Carolina rebound after a tough loss earlier this week to Georgia and the way that one ended?
Yeah, and that really was a tough loss, guys. When you talk about, again, this is a South Carolina program that, I think the expectations were really humble coming in, right? Picked to finish dead last in the league. But when you start out the way that South Carolina did, you can't help but let your imagination run wild. And, thoughts of March Madness start creeping into your mind. And to lose that one at home when you were favored by 6.5 points over a Georgia team that, again, I was surprised the spread was 6.5. I really was. I thought South Carolina on the home floor would find a way, but, of course, Georgia pulls the outright upset. South Carolina loses that game by 5. They missed 15 free throws in that ball game, guys. There's nothing more excruciating than losing a game like that when the controllables are there and you can't take advantage of it. But I think it starts, guys, with Meechie Johnson. I think getting him rolling right. I look at Arkansas and what they've done. They got the big bounce-back win on Tuesday, but Wade Taylor dropped 41 points on the Hogs, so you think maybe, just maybe, Meechie Johnson can be kind of that star guy, if you will. He's averaging 17.3 points per game, but, guys, when he gets hot, he's one of those dudes that can go out there and easily drop 30 points or so on anybody. Also, turnovers, guys. I was looking at this stat just before we jumped on the call. I think it's going to be really interesting to see who's able to play aggressive defense and force turnovers, right? Arkansas's defense ranks 301st in the country. South Carolina, 279th when it comes to forcing turnovers. I know Arkansas's had some trouble with sloppy play, so, of course, taking care of the basketball and being aggressive defensively is going to be key. But I think, guys, again, for South Carolina, it starts with Michi Johnson. They need to be better on the glass. We're out-rebounded by a significant margin against Georgia. B.J. Mack, Josh Gray down low. Colin Murray Boyles is a freshman they really like that's played significant minutes. Miles Studi, guys, by the way, is out in this game. I think he's going to miss 2 weeks. So that's a shooter that South Carolina is down. So that puts, I think, even more pressure on a guy like Michi Johnson to ball out and play his best. And when he plays well, typically things go well for South Carolina.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL and bowl season to esports. You'll find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.